Good morning, friends. Welcome to Sutta Study with Bhante Sudaso. We had a few issues connecting to the internet last week due to the hurricane. So everything that was scheduled for last week, we're actually going to do this week, which is quite great. All right. So you can find the sutta that we're going to be studying this morning in the live chat. So we're going to be studying Majjhima Nikaya 11, Tulasihanada Sutta, the Lesser Discourse on the Lion's Roar. And we will be studying it in 2 sessions. This morning will be the first half and tomorrow the second half. And hello to Jens, good to see you. And hello Geeta, Erin, welcome to Jason, Edward, and Galaxy from Malaysia. Good to see you. And welcome, of course, to Bhante Sudaso. Thank you so much for sharing the teachings with us. So without further ado, I'll pass it on to Bhante.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Good morning, friends. So welcome back to Sutta Study. So as mentioned, today we'll be going through the first half of the Tulasihanada Sutta. That's Majjhima Nikaya number 11. As usual, I'll read through the sutta and periodically give some explanations. Then at the end, there'll be some time for asking questions if you have any questions to ask. So I'll go ahead and begin. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi, at Jeta's Grove, in Anathapindika's park. There the Blessed One addressed the monks. Monks! Venerable Sir, those monks replied to the Blessed One. The Blessed One said this. Monks, it is only here that there is the contemplative, here that there is the second contemplative, here that there is the third contemplative, here that there is the fourth contemplative. Other doctrines are empty of contemplatives. Monks, it is in just this way that you rightly roar a lion's roar. So this opening statement here is quite a strong statement that the Buddha is making. So when he says, it is only here that there is the contemplative, so here he's using the word contemplative, which in Pali is samana. He's using it to refer to enlightened beings, awakened beings. So the contemplative, the second contemplative, the third contemplative, and the fourth contemplative is referring to the 4 stages of awakening. So the stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arhat. So when he says it's only here that there are the 4 kinds of contemplatives, the 4 kinds of awakened beings, he's saying it's only in the Buddhist teachings. It's only in Buddhism. You don't find it in other spiritual systems. You don't find it in other religions or in other schools of practice or thought. So he's basically saying that only Buddhism leads to enlightenment. A nice, strong statement, which is one of the particularly defining characteristics of the sutta. And he says, it isn't just this way that you rightly roar a lion's roar. So the metaphor of the lion's roar appears in many places in the suttas. And the lion's roar is, it has the meaning of a very strong statement made from a place of utter confidence. Just as a lion roars with a very loud voice, and a lion roars with complete confidence. In the same way, somebody who has had a deep, direct experience of absolute truth speaks about it with utter confidence and can make very strong statements with utter confidence. So this is the lion's roar. It's making a very strong statement with utter confidence based upon direct realization. So lion's roar then is commonly used to describe the victory cry of the arhat. So when somebody attains enlightenment, they'll make a statement expressing their enlightenment. So that's commonly called a lion's roar. Or the first time someone gives a Dhamma talk after attaining awakening, that's called the lion's roar. Or if somebody gives some incredibly powerful teaching based upon direct experience, then that's also called the lion's roar. So again, here the Buddha is saying, like, this is the way to rightly roar a lion's roar, is by pointing out that enlightenment is only possible through following Buddhist practice. It's not possible through following any other system of practice. So there's a popular saying these days that there are many paths up the mountain, but they all lead to the same peak. The Buddha would say no. There are many paths and they lead up different mountains to different peaks. And only one of those peaks is full enlightenment. And that's the one that the Buddhist path leads up. So then the Buddha continues. He says, monks, it is possible that a wanderer of another religion, so wanderer is one of the terms that was used for monastics at the time. So a wanderer of another religion means somebody who is an ordained monastic who follows a non-Buddhist practice of some sort. He says, it is possible that a wanderer of another religion might say, but what is the Venerable's assurance? What is his strength by means of which you say, it is only here that there is the contemplative, as before. Other doctrines are empty of contemplatives. In other words, what's your basis for claiming that enlightenment is only possible through Buddhist practice? If somebody asks you this question, how do you reply? And the Buddha says, monks, this is what is to be said to wanderers of other religions who speak in that way. Venerable, we have 4 things which have been declared by the Blessed One, the knower, the seer, the arhat, the fully enlightened one. Seeing them in ourselves, we say, it is only here that there is the contemplative, as before. Other doctrines are empty of contemplatives. What for? Venerable, we have confidence in the teacher. We have confidence in the Dhamma. We are accomplished in virtue, and our co-practitioners are dear and agreeable to us, both householders and renunciants. Venerable, these are the 4 things which have been declared by the Blessed One, the knower, the seer, the arhat, the fully enlightened one, which, seeing them in ourselves, we say, it is only here there is the contemplative, other doctrines are empty of contemplatives. And so this might not actually sound like a terribly profound statement here. So we have confidence in our teacher, we have confidence in the teachings, we have virtue, and we're on good terms with our fellow practitioners. Doesn't actually seem that special. So the Buddha acknowledges this. He says, monks, it is possible that that wanderer of another religion might say, Venerable, we also have confidence in a teacher, our teacher. We also have confidence in Dhamma, our Dhamma. We also are accomplished in virtue, our virtue. And our co-practitioners also are dear and agreeable to us, both householders and renunciants. Venerable, what is the distinction here? What is the variance? What makes it different for you than it is for us? In other words, they're asking, like, well, that's not a very special statement that you're making, these 4 things. So what is the distinction? What is it that makes Buddhist practice different from everybody else's practices? So then the Buddha gives a list of questions to ask. He says, monks, this is what is to be said to wanderers of other religions who speak in that way. Venerable, is there one goal or many goals? Monks, a wanderer of another religion who speaks correctly will answer in this way. There is one goal, not many goals. So in other words, enlightenment is the same for everyone. That's what he's saying. There's one goal. So enlightenment is the same for everyone. There's not different kinds of enlightenment. There's not different kinds of realization. There's not variance or distinction to be made in spiritual attainment. There's one goal, not many goals. So this is, again, the idea of many paths up the mountain all leading to the same peak. So he's saying, first off, do you agree that there's one peak, that we're all aiming at the same final goal of enlightenment? And they would say, yes, there's only one goal. There's not many different versions of enlightenment. There's just one. In other words, they're saying there's only one absolute reality, and that anybody who sincerely sets out in pursuit of absolute reality will eventually arrive at exactly the same discovery of absolute truth as everybody else does. So similar to the idea in science that if you perform your scientific procedures correctly, then you'll arrive at one conclusion, and that any other scientist who sets out in pursuit of discovery will arrive at exactly the same conclusion. So there's one goal, not many goals. There's only one enlightenment, not many forms of it. There's only one absolute truth, not many different truths. And then the next question is to ask, but Venerable, is the goal for one who is lustful or for one who is free of lust? Monks, a wanderer of another religion who speaks correctly will answer in this way. Venerable, the goal is for one who is free of lust, not for one who is lustful. And here's where we start to run into some potential issues, which is that there actually are quite a number of people who will claim that removal of lust is not necessary for attaining awakening. And in fact, some people might even claim that lust is beneficial or supportive, which is why the Buddha emphasizes one who speaks correctly will answer. The goal is for one who is free of lust, not for one who is lustful. So this is an important statement. So there are a lot of spiritual teachers outside of Buddhism who do not advocate for the removal of lust, and in fact are quite fond of lust and quite supportive of lust. And unfortunately, even within the Buddhist fold, you encounter some teachers who hold similar viewpoints that lust is not an obstacle to awakening. That's not necessary to let go of or overcome lust. And occasionally you'll even encounter a teacher who claims that it's not possible to completely eliminate lust. But the Buddha was quite clear on this. The Buddha was quite clear that it is only through the complete elimination of lust that enlightenment becomes possible. And the next question, but Venerable, is the goal for one who has hate or one who is free of hate? Monks, a wanderer of another religion who speaks correctly will answer in this way. Venerable, the goal is for one who is free of hate, not for one who has hate. So the Pali word here is dosa, which it does mean hate or hatred, but it also has a somewhat broader meaning of any aversive mind state. So hating anything doesn't necessarily just mean the most extreme forms of hate. So these two go together. So lust and hate are the attempt to get something and the attempt to push something away. The attempt to hold on to something and the attempt to get rid of something. So it's this basic push and pull attitude that we take towards every experience that we have. If we like something, we try to hold on to it. If we dislike it, we try to get rid of it. But it's exactly this pushing and pulling that keeps us caught in samsara, that keeps us trapped. So in order to break free of our constant vacillation, our constant flailing around in samsara, then it's necessary to stop this constant agitation of pushing and pulling, this constant flailing of lust and hate. Next, he said, the next question to ask is, but Venerable, is the goal for one who is deluded or for one who is free of delusion? He says, monks, a wanderer of another religion who speaks correctly will answer in this way. Venerable, the goal is for one who is free of delusion, not for one who is deluded. This one should be pretty clear. Since the attainment of awakening is by definition the attainment of the highest wisdom, the attainment of direct, undeniable knowing of reality, then that necessarily means the complete absence of delusion. So it might not seem so necessary to include this, but actually it is necessary because you do encounter some spiritual traditions which advocate for crazy wisdom, spiritual traditions who advocate for this idea that through confusion or through randomness, through chaotic behaviors, one can start to break free of one's underlying tendencies and habits and patterns, and that this can lead towards awakening. But this is not the case. It's necessary to have a very sharp, clear mind in order to attain awakening. And to constantly question our underlying assumptions about reality, to constantly question our beliefs, to constantly question what we think is real and what we think is true. Never just to believe something because we like it or because we want it to be that way. So next, the question to ask is, but Venerable, is the goal for one who has craving or for one who is free of craving? Monks, a wanderer of another religion who speaks correctly, will answer in this way. Venerable, the goal is for one who is free of craving, not for one who has craving. This is similar to before with lust. So craving and lust are just different aspects of desire, different aspects of wanting. I suspect he included these separately because lust, the word raga in Pali, lust tends to be associated with sensuality, whereas tanha, craving, has a broader usage. It tends to be used in a more broad sense to include any form of craving, any kind of desire. So including the desire for existence, the desire to be, and the desire for non-existence, the desire to cease to be, or to avoid states of being. Then the next one, but Venerable, is the goal for one who has clinging or for one who is free of clinging? Monks, a wanderer of another religion who speaks correctly will answer in this way. Venerable, the goal is for one who is free of clinging, not for one who has clinging. So here the Pali word is upadana, so commonly translated as clinging or grasping or attaching. So this has the sense of both reaching out to get something and also of trying to hold on to something. So in particular, the emphasis here is on holding on. So in order to attain enlightenment, one must be willing to let go of all things. So as long as we're holding on to any piece of samsara, then it will not be possible for us to see the whole picture. It will not be possible for us to take the backward step that lets the whole view of reality come into our field of knowing. So is the goal for one who has clinging or for one who is free of clinging? Well, it's for one who is willing to let go of the specifics, the individual pieces of samsara, that one is able to see the entire scope of reality. So then the goal is for one who is free of clinging, not for one who has clinging. Next, the question, but Venerable, is the goal for one who is wise or for one who is unwise? Monks, a wanderer of another religion who speaks correctly, will answer in this way. Venerable, the goal is for one who is wise, not for one who is unwise. Again, pretty clear. We're trying to cultivate the highest wisdom. So enlightenment is for those who are wise. Next question. But venerable, is the goal for one who approves and rejects, or for one who does not approve or reject? Monks, a wanderer of another religion who speaks correctly, will answer in this way. Venerable, the goal is for one who does not approve or reject, not for one who approves and rejects. So this, again, is about preferences, liking and disliking. We have an experience, and we decide almost immediately whether we like it or dislike it. A sensation appears, and we decide almost immediately whether we approve of it or reject it. So this attitude then is what underlies desire and aversion. First, there's the liking or the disliking. Then based on that, there's desire and aversion. So this is actually that fundamental first step that happens in the mind, is this basic preference of liking and disliking, approving or rejecting. And then from that comes desire and aversion. So this is relatively subtle, and it's going on all the time. But as one's mindfulness and concentration becomes very sharp and clear, it becomes possible to notice that there is a sensation, and then a split second later, the barest shortest moment later, there is approving or rejecting, liking or disliking. And then based on that, there is desire or aversion. And so then we can start to see that the experience itself does not inherently have the quality of being likable or dislikable. The experience itself is just an experience. The sensation is just a sensation. And the value judgment that we place on it is something extra. It's not inherent to the sensation. There's a very popular poem from the Chan Buddhist tradition. It's quite old. It's about 1,500 years old, but I'd have to look it up. Xin Xin Ming, the poem on faith in mind. And it starts off with a very simple line. It says, the path is easy for one who has no preferences. In fact, one could even say that one who has no preferences has already reached the end of the path. So next. Yes, the goal for one who approves and rejects, and for one who does not approve or reject. The next one is the goal for one who delights in proliferation, or for one who does not delight in proliferation. Monks, a wanderer of another religion who speaks correctly, will answer in this way. Venerable, the goal is for one who does not delight in proliferation, not for one who delights in proliferation. So proliferation in Pali is papancha. So papancha is the tendency that we have to complicate what is simple. The tendency that we have to take an experience and to build a story on it. To take an experience and build a sense of self around it. To take an experience and to make it into something much more than it is. So this is contrary to wisdom, because wisdom is knowing things directly as they are. Knowing things exactly as they are. Papancha is taking an experience and then building a story on that experience and believing the story. So we're getting caught up in what we tell ourselves about reality, not what reality actually is. So an example of this happened many years ago. How can I put this? There's always a danger in using real life stories. So maybe it's best to avoid real life stories. But let's say that something goes missing. And you immediately assume, well, this object was stolen. And it was stolen by so-and-so. And then we tell ourselves that story and we believe it. To the point where we're absolutely certain the object was stolen by so-and-so. And we believe that story. And then later on we go and confront the person and the person says, no, I never took it. I don't know what you're talking about. And then later on we find the missing object. It had just been misplaced somewhere. And we realize that all along the story that we told ourselves was just a story. But while we're in the phase of believing the story, it feels absolutely true, absolutely real, as though there is no possible way anything else could be true, anything else could be real. But in actuality, what's it based on? It's simply based upon not seeing the object where we think it's supposed to be. So you go and look for the bed sheet and it's not in the closet. And then in a few short seconds, we've built a story. That person stole the bed sheets. Well, did they? Or is that just a story we're telling ourselves? I'm absolutely certain they stole the bed sheets. Did they? Do we know that? Or do we just know that the bed sheets are not in the closet? All we know is that the bed sheets are not in the closet, actually. We don't know anything about stealing. We don't know anything about where those bed sheets might be. All we know is that they're not in the closet. Technically, we don't even know that. What we know is that we had a sensory experience of not seeing them in the closet. Not even that is a guarantee that they aren't in the closet. It just means we had a sensory experience of not seeing them in the closet. But from that, we build a story and we convince ourselves the story is true. So this is the danger of papancha. Then based upon a false belief, a belief in the story that we've told ourselves, then we can make actions which are based upon a false story. And then no matter how reasonable those actions seem to be, they will inevitably produce distorted results because they are based upon distorted information. They're based upon distorted stories. So it's important to really closely look at our tendency towards story building, and especially towards our tendency to believe the stories that we build. And to constantly try to get back to what do we actually know? So rather than saying, I know that so-and-so stole the bed sheets. It's like, no, that's not what we know. What we know is that we did not see the bed sheets in the closet. That we can say for sure. I did not see the bed sheets in the closet. Everything else is papancha and therefore is questionable at best. Then utter rubbish is more likely. So watching out for papancha. So this is a silly example, the example of some missing bed sheets. But we do this all the time with every aspect of our experience. We have a sensation of some kind, and we build a story around that sensation, and we believe the story, often to the point where the original sensation is completely obscured or lost. And we're just living in the story that we've told ourselves. And we keep elaborating on the story, building up the story, and believing in the story. And this is what we've been doing since beginningless time. We've been building stories and living in stories. Whereas Buddhist practice is about cutting through the stories and seeing reality for what it is, without the story. So this is what the Buddha means when he says the goal is for one who does not delight in proliferation. So in other words, enlightenment is attained by letting go of our stories, by dropping our stories and coming into direct contact with reality without the distortion and imagination that we pile on top of it moment after moment. And again, this is exceptionally difficult because we're so addicted to our story building tendencies. And we really love our stories. We really believe our stories. We really think that they're true and real and absolute, but they're not. They're just stories. Stories that we make up and tell ourselves. So we need to learn to look very closely. Basically, anytime we tell ourselves, I am certain of this, ask yourself, am I? What's this based on? Is there any other possible way that things could be? Could things be any other way than this story? Is there some other explanation, some other way things could have played out? Always questioning our stories. Don't believe your own stories. So I'll read one more paragraph and then we can switch to questions. So the next paragraph is getting into one of my favorite aspects of the suttas, which comes up in a handful of places. The Buddha says, monks, there are these two perspectives, the perspective of existence and the perspective of non-existence. Monks, those contemplatives and priests who are stuck on the perspective of existence, stay close to the perspective of existence and adhere to the perspective of existence, reject the perspective of non-existence. Monks, those contemplatives and priests who are stuck on the perspective of non-existence, stay close to the perspective of non-existence and adhere to the perspective of non-existence, reject the perspective of existence. Monks, this is what I say about those contemplatives and priests who do not accurately understand the origin, disappearance, gratification, drawback, and escape from those two perspectives. They have lust, hate, delusion, craving, and clinging. They are unwise, prone to approving and rejecting, delighting in proliferation. They have not been freed from birth, old age, dying, sorrow, lamentation, pain, depression, and anguish. They have not been freed from suffering. So, these two viewpoints, these two opinions, these two beliefs, the belief that things exist and the belief that things don't exist. There's a number of suttas where the Buddha very clearly states that both beliefs are completely wrong. It is not accurate to say that anything exists. It's also not accurate to say that it doesn't exist. So the flagship sutta on this is the Kaccanagotta Sutta, Samyutta Nikaya 12.15, which I spoke about a few weeks ago. So you can find that also on the YouTube channel if you look back in history. Where the Buddha says, without veering to either of these extremes, I teach the Dhamma by the middle. And then he goes on to lay out the framework of dependent origination. So the causal, conditional process through which things appear to exist. So the Buddha clearly states you cannot say that anything exists or that it doesn't exist. However, you can explain the causal, conditional process through which things appear to exist. That's a very different statement than saying it exists. And that's also a very different statement from saying it doesn't exist. Rather, there is apparent existence under particular conditions. That's the closest you can get. And even that's a little dangerous because that's veering too close to stating that things exist. So the Buddha says that, actually in the Kaccanagotta Sutta, he says most people in the world fall into one of two beliefs, either the belief that things exist or the belief that they don't. So here he's coming to that same thing. He's saying that there are spiritual practitioners who either believe that things exist or believe that they don't exist. And as long as they're stuck on these beliefs, then their minds are filled with lust, hate, delusion, craving, clinging. They're unwise, prone to approving and rejecting, delighting in proliferation. So all the qualities that he just had the monks ask. Is the goal for one who has lust or one who's free from lust? Well, one who's free from lust. Is the goal for one who has hate or one who's free of hate? Oh, one who's free of hate. So he's saying if you believe that things exist, then you have all the qualities which will prevent you from attaining awakening. If you believe that things don't exist, then you have all the qualities that will prevent you from attaining awakening. So here he's pointing clearly to the fact that in order to attain awakening, we must abandon the concepts of existence and non-existence. We must abandon the belief that things either exist or do not exist. If you say, this tissue box is real, you will never attain enlightenment. If you say, this tissue box is not real, you will never attain enlightenment. That's what the Buddha is saying here. So I think this is a good time to go ahead and pause and to finish the rest of the sutta tomorrow. So at this time, if you have any questions or comments about the material we've covered today, please go ahead and enter it in the live chat, and I'll answer as best I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. There are no questions as of now, but they might appear in the meanwhile. But we have a few friends that have joined us. Hello, Liz and Sarah. Elaine, good to see you. Hello, Al. Mark, good to see you, friends. And we can see if any questions pop up. Otherwise, we can save them all for tomorrow for Bhante when the sutta is over. Seems like friends like to ask questions at the end. Or actually not. We have a few popping up. So
Great.
Mark is saying, so when the Buddha says there is existence or non-existence, he's referring to the extremes of this belief. What would he say is the accurate way to describe the middle way that avoids annoying lay people who don't get this?
So one way that you can look at it is you can see it as being like a coin. So a coin on one side says exists, and on the other side it says does not exist. So heads and tails. Well, is the coin absolutely one or the other? You can't say that a coin is absolutely heads, always heads, only heads. You can't say that it's absolutely tails, always tails, only tails. But you can see that under certain conditions it will appear as heads, and under other conditions it will appear as tails. But the coin itself is just a coin. A coin is not heads or tails, a coin is just a coin. In the same way, reality cannot be defined in terms of things existing or not existing. Reality just is what it is. But under certain conditions, things will appear to exist, and under other conditions, they will appear to not exist. There is a book which goes into excruciating detail on this subject. It's quite old and it's out of print. It's called The Buddhist Teaching of Totality. I keep encouraging people to read this book, and to date, nobody has. But I'm still hopeful that someday somebody other than me will read this book. It is mind-blowing, and it goes into very great depth on this topic. Ayasoma is making her disgusted face. She's one of the people who has never read the book, and yet has already decided she hates it.
I skimmed through it.
Okay. Yeah, so you don't get it. Well, that's fine. You will someday. But yeah, one way to relate to it is, again, like a coin. From one perspective, it seems to be heads. From another perspective, it seems to be tails. In actuality, it's not either one, but it contains both. Okay.
All right, thanks, Bhante. What is the name of the book again? People are asking.
The Buddhist Teaching of Totality.
By who?
Garma C.C. Chang.
Well, that would be, can you spell it, please?
Yeah, The Buddhist Teaching of Totality. Garma, Garma, CC, initials, Chang, Chang.
Great.
If you just look for the Buddhist teaching of totality.
Yes, I'll just wrote it down so we're all set for that.
You can buy it online, actually. I just checked. It's available online.
Okay.
Yep. So good news. So every one of you should get this book. I don't normally advertise books, but this one is fabulous. So there are two kinds of people: the kind who hate books without reading them, such as Ayasoma, who's making her disgusted face again.
No.
And the kind of people who read fabulous, insightful books and come to a deeper understanding of the Buddhist teachings.
All right. Anyway, so then Mark is also asking, does the Buddha ever voice this view or just give metaphors? The view of how to avoid annoyingly people who don't get this, like how to explain it, not about the view of the book, of reading the book or not reading the book.
I don't understand the question.
To the question that he had asked before, when the Buddha says there is existence or non-existence, is he referring to the extremes of disbelief? What would he say is the accurate way to describe the middle way that avoids annoyingly people who don't get this? So you answered that.
He describes the middle way as dependent origination.
Okay, great.
Which, once again, is conditional appearance. So dependent origination is not saying that things exist, but rather that under certain conditions, things appear to exist. They seem to exist. Dependent origination is not also saying that things don't exist, because if things didn't exist at all, then they would not appear to exist under certain conditions. Rather, under one set of conditions, something will seem to exist, and under another set of conditions, it will seem to not exist. In actuality, you cannot define it as either absolutely existent or absolutely non-existent. You can only say that sometimes it appears and sometimes it does not. Okay.
Right. And Kam says, Bhakti, good morning. It seems easy to understand intellectually, but what should we do to gain the direct experience of neither existence nor non-existence?
It starts with developing anicca sanya, the perception of impermanence. As you develop the perception of impermanence, actually, if you do it wholeheartedly, then eventually you'll get to a point where you recognize the meaninglessness of the dichotomy of existence and non-existence. Through developing the recognition of impermanence, eventually you will clearly see that things cannot be defined as either existing or not existing. So the next step, by the way, like so many things in Buddhism, it comes in the form of a tetralemma, which means there's 4 modes. So one is to say that things exist. Second, that they don't exist. Third, that they both exist and do not exist. Fourth, that they neither exist nor do not exist. None of these are correct statements. But the last 2 are a bit more accurate than the first 2. So saying that things both exist and do not exist is a bit more accurate. And saying that they neither exist nor do not exist is also closer to truth. But these 2 viewpoints are also rejected as being either subtle affirmations of existence or subtle denials of existence. But it's a little closer. So through developing the perception of impermanence, you can become aware that your experience is both existing and not existing. It's both real and not real. That's a little bit closer to truth. It's still not quite there, but it's getting closer. And you can and once you're to that state where you're deep into the perception of impermanence, then you can actively cultivate the perception of simultaneous existence and non-existence. And that can lead you to a deeper experiential understanding of this. So this is what's called emptiness, by the way, sunyata. Emptiness is the transcendence of the ideas of existence and non-existence. Yep. Anything else?
Thank you, Bante. And Jason asks, would Schrodinger's cat work for understanding existence / non-existence?
So I'm not an expert on Schrodinger's cat. I only have like the pop culture understanding of the Schrodinger's cat thing. So I would have to look into the Schrodinger's cat thing more closely before I can make a clear statement on that. Yeah, as I recall, the idea of the Schrodinger's cat theory is that you don't know whether the cat is alive or dead. So therefore, Schrodinger posed the idea that the cat therefore cannot absolutely be one or the other until you look and see for yourself. So I actually completely reject Schrodinger's viewpoint here because he's assuming that, one, the cat is not aware of whether it's alive or dead. And that seems pretty doubtful. I'm pretty sure the cat knows whether it's alive or dead. And two, it's also assuming that we don't have any way of knowing whether consciously or unconsciously of whether or not the cat is alive or dead. So I'm not a fan of trying to map Schrodinger's cat onto Buddhism. But the idea that the cat is simultaneously alive and dead is kind of veering somewhat into the domain of saying that things are both existent and non-existent, I suppose. But yeah, I'm hesitant. It always gets messy when we try to map non-Buddhist philosophies onto Buddhism. It almost invariably causes problems. So I just don't go there. As much as possible, I try to only explain Buddhist concepts through the lens of Buddhism. Because whenever it's explained through the lens of any other philosophy or any other spiritual system, it inevitably distorts the meaning of what the Buddha was talking about. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante. And Al says, the cat is good, same as the observation quandary in physics. It is one way when observed and another when not observed. They are both. A superposition exists dependently but not conditionally.
I have no idea what you just said. That's fine.
And Silas says, that is a great book, the one that you recommended.
Have you read it? Have I finally met somebody other than me who's read this book?
Apparently so.
I actually did. I met a monk years ago who had read this book and who also agreed that it's amazing.
And for the other questions, Silas, you can send an email to info@emptycloud.org. And Sarah says, on the subject of books, I read a book called The Tao of Physics, which provides a comparison between modern physics concepts and Eastern philosophies of reality. And I guess there's a second part to the question, so we'll wait a few seconds to see if it's coming.
Advance warning, I've never read that book.
But Silas says, yes, it was gifted to me in Asia, the book, The Teachings of Totality. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've never read the Tao of Physics. I've heard of it, but I don't know anything about it, and I haven't read it.
Oh, maybe it doesn't continue.
Oh.
Yeah, Sarah says that was it. All right. Well, maybe we should start a Buddhist
book club.
Book club or Buddhist book club, so people can have these interesting conversations on book that we have all read, perhaps. All right. Oh, hi, Carolina. Good to see you. Carolina just stopped by to say hello. Good to see you. All right. So I think that's all for today. Oh, Silas is asking, want a copy of the Tao of Physics? It's just collecting dust on my shelf.
Yeah, if you want to send it to us, for sure. Yeah.
Great. So you can find the address on emptycloud.org. It's 29 Ridgeway Avenue, West Orange, New Jersey, USA. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right. So that's all for this morning. And we will be meeting again tomorrow for the second part of the Sutta with Bhante Sudazo. But in between, this evening at 7:30 p.m. New York City time, we will have our new resident monk, Bhante Kamuto, sharing Dhamma with us. So do not miss it. Coming soon on BNN. So looking forward to seeing you all this evening. And then remember, as usual, on Friday evening, we'll have monk chat. So you can bring any questions you have that are not necessarily related to any of the topics that we're discussing during the Dhamma talks this week, and bring them to the monastics, and we'll do our best to answer them. All right, so we can end the morning with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And have a great